Hello and welcome to the next edition of our New South Wales Referees Life Member Series. Today we're continuing a bit of a Canterbury referees flavour. We have a former first grade touch judge and state of origin touch judge, someone who was extremely active in admin and coaching roles in both the Canterbury district and in Group 7. It's Peter Ryan. How are you, Peter?
I'm fine, thank you, Daniel.
Thankfully, we're starting to get towards the end of this coronavirus thing. How have you been keeping yourself busy specifically during this time?
Oh, pretty good, pretty quiet actually. You're pretty restricted as to where you could go and what you could do, so that kept you housebound most of the time. But I did sneak out the odd occasion to do a few things. I purchased myself a new motor vehicle. I enjoyed cooking, so it gave me an opportunity to do a lot more cooking. So I've got a lot of frozen food in the freezer at the present moment. That'll stand me in good stead for quite some time.
Is there a particular cuisine you like to cook?
No, nothing. I like to do a lot of sort of casserole type things. I find it pretty easy to do, but just a lot of preparation, and yeah, you get some satisfaction when they taste good.
Yep. And the motor vehicle, what type is that?
I bought a Honda HRV.
Okay.
I had a Honda prior to that. I had a CRV, but there's a few little difficulties that were started to come up because, unfortunately, some services I was having done, they weren't doing the right thing by me. So I did get some repairs done, and the mechanic said to me, he said, "We just don't know what the long-term damage possibly could be." So I thought to myself, well, I'll just unload it while I've got the opportunity to.
Yep.
So, I've done that. So, yeah, that's a new venture.
So away from COVID-19, what keeps you busy? What are some of your other pursuits?
Oh, mainly just golf these days, Daniel. I play a fair bit of golf here at Kiama. I do travel away, as you can see on those photographs there, with a group of guys up in the golf club. We go off to different parts of the world, down the Murray Valley, down the Murray River, up the Hunter, down the south coast, New South Wales, various different places. And they're a good group of blokes. I'm one of the elder statesmen of the group, so they tend to look after me a bit. So it's all good fun. Yep. That photo, the top one there, the guy on the extreme right-hand side, somebody might recognise him. That's Craig Jones, who used to do a bit of refereeing in junior reps many years ago and did a lot of refereeing in country rugby league. Craig's a member of Group 7. He's now taken over the role I had for several years down here.
I must ask, I've asked everyone else, what's your handicap at the moment?
Well, it varies between 23 and 24. It's going the wrong way, I think, at the moment.
Now,
look, I enjoy playing golf, and I play with a good group of people, and we have a lot of laughs, and yeah, don't take it too serious. But we play the game the way it should be played, but we have a lot of fun.
Now, we joke about a high handicap here, but you actually have claim to a hole-in-one?
I did, and as it says on the date there, that was 2012. I wish I could play the same sort of shots today. So they just don't go as far these days as what they used to. But yeah, but that was a good day. I mean, that wasn't the actual shot, as you could well imagine, but a photographer got me to pose for it, and he said, "I'll mount your ball for you." So that's what they did. Yep. But now, yeah, that was a big thrill.
For those that don't know, you're down on the south coast at the moment, a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, Kiama. Yeah. We moved here in, my wife and myself moved down here in 1998. We lived up in Sydney, and I was always keen to get out of Sydney. My mother was born in the country and up at Kempsey, up in the north coast of New South Wales. And I spent a lot of time, and I still do spend some time up there. I've still got relatives up there, and I still have relatives on the same property where Mum was born. So I got a great affiliation to the country, and I loved it. So we had an opportunity to get out of Sydney, and that's why we came down here. But unfortunately, I did lose my wife back in 2014. So that was a bit of a blow. But life goes on, and we just move on.
So you talked about moving to the south coast. Can you tell us a little bit about what working life was for you, what roles you had throughout your career?
Yeah, I started off. Well, I had a little job in a furniture factory initially when my first job actually was a paper boy, and I'll come back to that in a second. But then I used to sell papers outside a hotel at Arncliffe in Sydney, and also Arncliffe railway station of a morning. But then I got a job as an apprentice at the New South Wales Government Printers, and I had 30 odd years there. And they were good years. I thoroughly enjoyed it there. I worked my way up through the ranks, and I worked my way up to what they call an overseer. Okay. And I was in charge of a section there of probably 50 or 60 people. And I was very privileged and honoured to be sent by the government twice to Germany to have machinery commissioned that we'd purchased over there. So they were great years. I learned a lot from that. It wasn't easy at times, but it was very fruitful to me. But they closed the printing office down, and I had a couple of other little jobs. Worked for an American automobile company at Marrickville for a while, and that was another good job. Unfortunately, they started to close parts of that, and was last on, first off, and I was one of those. And I ended up getting a job with a guy that sold children's toys, and through a friend of mine at Canterbury Referees Association, his brother-in-law. So I worked there for a few years, and that was good fun. And when I moved back down to Kiama, my last job was delivering newspapers again, so I went the full cycle. I covered the lot.
Did you get much of a chance to practice blowing your whistle as a paper boy?
No, not really. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Well, when I was in the car, I didn't need it. And when I was selling them outside the hotel in Arncliffe, I didn't. They all knew where I was, the same as the railway station. So, no, there was no whistle blowing in those days as far as I was concerned.
So we'll have a look at your on-field career now. You took up the whistle way back in 1975. You had a long affiliation with Canterbury and have done many roles, which we'll talk about a bit more later on. How did this come about?
Well, I always had, from the time I was a young fellow, I took a tremendous interest for some unknown reason in referees. I don't know why I did, but I used to. And even I went to the extent when I was, Mum and Dad used to get the paper delivered at home, and every Tuesday morning I'd grab the paper to see who was refereeing, the first grade referees. And I got to know them. I didn't personally know them, but I knew who each guy was. And if I saw him on the street after a period of time, I'd recognise who they were. But I took a great interest in referees, and I often wondered maybe I should become a referee. But anyway, life moved on, and I got married, and children came, and spent a lot of time working and that sort of thing. So I never had the opportunity to pursue that career. And I was at a social function one night, and I got talking to a guy about it. And he said, "Oh, you should approach this fellow. His name's Todd Walker." And he said, "I think he's a referee." So anyway, I knew this Todd. I'd say hello to him. So I went and approached him one day. And sure enough, he was a member of Canterbury Bankstown Referees Association. And he said, "Look, if you'd like to come around to my place, I'll start you off." And that's exactly what we did. So away I went, and he put me through the ropes, and finally sent me off to Reg Dick, who was then the current secretary of Canterbury Association. And that led to end up down in Phillip Street and under the examined by Cyril Wigsell and Cole Schomburg. And I attained my ticket at my second attempt. I failed at my first attempt. And that's where it all began. And yeah, it's just been great.
Yeah. So you worked your way through Canterbury, and then you were graded into the New South Wales referee ranks in 1981 as member 706. Can you tell us a little bit about your story coming from Canterbury refs into grade?
Yeah, that was, well, I worked refereeing in Canterbury. I got into, I finally cracked it for A grade. I refereed some A grade fixtures, and in season 1980, I refereed the B grade grand final, and we had great competition between a very good friend of mine, Paul Archer, who's currently the president of Canterbury, and he did the A grade grand final. I did the B grade grand final. Well, in 81, I was then graded, but prior to that, I refereed in several seasons in the junior reps, as they were in those days, and I had a couple of very good games and a couple of ordinary games. I got away with blue murder in a few of them, I think, by the sound of it. But they saw fit enough for me to take me off and give me a trial at the graded ranks. And I refereed in 4 weekends of trials. And I got a phone call one Monday night at about 9 o'clock, it was red stick to tell me that I'd been graded, along with 8 other guys, and 2 of those other guys were Canterbury. So I was absolutely thrilled to bits. You know, it was just amazing.
So they were very different times back then. The junior reps wasn't actually a squad. They were more appointments just from the district, and then you actually had to physically go and do a trial period to get into grade.
That's what that's how it worked. It was sort of your own association would nominate you, and anyway, because most of nearly all associations had somebody tied up with the appointments board. I think that had something to do with it. And our current secretary, Red Stick, he was on the appointments board of the New South Wales Rugby League. And 3 guys from Canterbury, we went down there and we all got graded, along with all those other guys there from all various associations. But yeah, you spent, I can't remember how many weeks it was. It went for a few weeks, 4 or 5 weeks of different President's Cup or Jersey Flegg or Ball or something of that nature. And yeah, it was good. And you travelled all over Sydney, different grounds to referee. And you got the opportunity to meet new people because they were all foreign to you, from different walks of life and different associations.
So at what point then in your career did your focus turn to touch judging?
Well, I started off, naturally enough, just running lines in lower grades. My first ever grade game was with Barry Barnes, actually, and my memory serves me, I think it might have been Peter Moon was with me. It was up at the old Cumberland Oval. Yep. And you went for several weeks just running lines, week in and week out. Then all of a sudden your appointments turned up and you've got a centre. And my first centre was an under-23 game at Cogra Oval between St George and Cronulla. And that was a wonderful experience. I had the likes of a couple of guys that remember were Gavin Miller was the captain of Cronulla, and Ivan Henjak was playing for St George. And yeah, that was a great experience. And I did a couple of more centres, and I did a half a reserve grade game at Belmore Sports Ground when Barry Bradstock, another former Canterbury referee, who's unfortunately passed away now. Barry broke down, and Eric Cox was there. He said, "Here's your chance, son." And out I went, and I did half a reserve grade game. And I thought I did pretty well at that. Following week, I did another under-23 game at Henson Park. And I knew I didn't referee that well, but I never refereed another centre. That's the sort of the way that things worked in those days. You either made it or you didn't. And I ended up on the line, and in some respects, I was glad I did because I got more opportunities as a touch judge. I think I would have got as a referee.
Yep.
Because you get two chances as a toucher. You only get one as a referee.
True. It's a game of numbers. So, like all first grade officials, you toiled away in the lower grades now as a touch judge. Can you tell us a little bit about this time preparing yourself for first grade?
Well, yes. I mean, I got up in, I went up to reserve grade, and that was, things were getting better. And I took some good advice from a fellow Canterbury referee by the name of Bobby Hunt. Bob was a first grade touch judge, a former footballer with Canterbury. And Bob was a very smart boy, and I asked him a few tips about touch judging, and he had some very wise words of advice. So I took that on board, and plus the fact that there were many other guys that contributed towards that too that helped you along. So all you did was try and keep yourself out of trouble and perform at your best of ability and try and not make too many mistakes. And that's when your opportunities came.
So here comes the first big opportunity in your career. In round 3 of 1983, you make your first grade debut as a touch judge. It's at Seaford Oval. I've got Seaford Oval here in the background.
That's right.
Canberra playing North. The referee's Barry Barnes and the other touch judge is Brian Gately. What are your memories of this experience, the week leading up to it and the game itself? Well,
it's just wonderful. If my memory serves me, I got a feeling just the night before. That was on a Sunday, and I think the night before, or it might have been, I just can't remember now exactly, but there was a big, the referees, New South Wales referees had a big dinner And I think we went to that dinner that night, and the next morning had to go fly to Canberra for that first grade game. I'm sure that was the situation. And but I can remember the lead up to it was just I was as nervous as anything. I'd never been so nervous in my life as that day when I ran onto the field. And I ran out onto the field, and I ran to the Barry Barnes said, we're going to run left, or so-and-so's running left to right. So I ran to the appropriate end of the ground. I looked across to see where Brian Gately was, and Brian was right down the other end. And I thought, my Godfather, I've made a blue straight away. I've gone to the wrong end of the field. But Brian, to his credit, had the habit of running to one end and then sprinting the full length of the field and heading on the other end. So I went to the right end.
Oh, that's good. You mentioned nerves. Was that something you had throughout your career, or you think more so
I did.
Particular occasion?
All the way through, particularly in juniors when I first started. I'd virtually physically make myself sick, and I carried that into the graded ranks too. It was very similar. I got very, very nervous. As time went by, it started to. I wasn't as bad. I got a lot easier with it. I felt a lot more comfortable in what I was doing and that sort of thing. So, but initially, yes, I was extremely nervous.
What do you put that down to? Was it a fear of making mistakes, a fear of the crowd, the atmosphere?
Yeah, I think probably making mistakes was one of the things you didn't want to do.
Yep.
You just didn't want to make a mistake. And if you made one, which I did, I made them over the years, like everybody, I suppose. But I learned quickly you've got to forget it, because while you dwell on it, you're going to make more mistakes. So I think that's basically what it was. It was just the fear of making a mistake. And you were under a lot of pressure. I mean, things were starting to build, particularly in first grade. In those years where I spent a lot of time there, you had TV cameras, not as bad as what they are today, but there were enough there, and they kept their eye on you all the time, so they kept you pretty honest.
Yep, it certainly did. So who were some of the influential figures in your career coming through the grades and into first grade?
Oh, look, I ran with some great people. Referees, I ran with some terrific referees. Michael Stone, Bill Harrigan, Kevin Roberts, Chris Ward, some really good blokes, Barry Barnes. And I mean, it's an endless list. They're very good. And some great touch judges. I was privileged to run the majority of the first grade games I ran with Mick Ryan. And Mick and I became pretty good friends, both on and off the field. And we spent a lot of time together, a hell of a lot of time. There's some other good guys. And another great friend of mine was Les Matthews. I spent a fair bit of time with Les. I used to go to a lot of games with Les. We went travel together because we seemed to get appointed quite often to the same. He might have been a lower grade or a different grades, but we went together. And also later in my career with Max Dunn. Yep. And Max and I spent a tremendous amount of time together in reserve grade. And we were both then respective in-goal judges on the same days. And they were great days, good fun.
Yep. I think we'll talk a bit more about Mick Ryan later on and the game you did do with Max, the 91 grand final. Bit of a question without notice, talking about people you used to run with and nerves. Did you ever find when you had a fellow Canterbury referee, that was a bit of a settling kind of experience, having a familiar face?
Oh, no doubt, Daniel. It really was. It was when I first went into grade, as I say, look, two guys, Peter Moon and John Cole, got graded at the same time as I did, but we had a plethora of Canterbury referees in grade, which was really good because just about any game you go to, there'd be a Canterbury referee. There'd be Bobby Hunter, Bobby Gale, and Mick Thompson. It was just endless. And it was just good. And that helped you. It certainly did. I mean, nothing against the other guys are great blokes too, but you knew these people. And it's just that settling time for you while they were there.
Yep. A few familiar faces there on the screen for Canterbury referees. Very young Matt Hewitt.
Yeah. That's Bobby Hunt there next to Les. Great bloke, Bobby. Bing Lee, Matty Hewitt. Good guys, real good blokes.
So in 1985, you've been working your way through. You're a bit more established in the top grade now. You work your way into the under-23s grand final. Graham Annesley is the referee, St George first Parramatta at the SCG. What was this experience like for you?
Oh, wonderful. So, I mean, you dream of things getting an opportunity to get to that level. And when I got appointed, that I thought how great it was. It was just a great day. I remember extremely well. It was a miserable day. It was cold, windy, and not the greatest sort of weather. But it was just a great experience, wonderful experience. Loved it.
And I suppose it was probably your real first big taste of being there on grand final day, even though it was the first game of the day.
It certainly was. Yes, it certainly was. Yes, something I cherish very much, and something I thought I'd never ever achieve.
Did you get to? Did you get to savour the atmosphere of the day? Did you get to hang around and watch subsequent games?
What I did. Yeah. Stayed there all day. Yeah, wonderful.
Now, probably the next and possibly the biggest appointment in your career comes in 1986 when you're appointed to the first State of Origin match of the year at Lang Park. Can you describe your thoughts leading up to this match?
Oh, yeah, that was, again, just, well, what happened was I was at work at the government printers, and I was in my office and I got a phone call from Dennis Braybrook. And Dennis, in his own sort of a way, said, look, he said, nothing's been done yet. But he said to me, he said, if you are fortunate enough to get appointed to the State of Origin game, would you like to take your wife with you? And I said, oh, that'd be wonderful. I said, you know, if that eventuated like that, yes, I would. I think that'd be tremendous. So he said, look, nothing's been done yet. Okay, so I hung the phone up. Within 3 or 4 minutes, he rang me back. He said, well, you've been appointed. And I couldn't get over the difference of 3 minutes. I don't know what that ever meant. I've never ever found out. But I was absolutely thrilled to pieces. I was just so excited. I thought to get this, it was just wonderful. Yeah, it was just great. And the lead up to it, the days before and the travelling up there that day with Kevin and Annette in the plane and meeting the guys when we got up there, and they took us out for a very light lunch, and travelling to the ground was just enormous, and walking through the crowd in that bar underneath. I mean, they all knew who Kevin was. They didn't know who I was to a great extent. So I thought maybe I better take a couple of steps backwards behind him, let him go through in front of me, let him cop the flak. But it was just wonderful experience.
You touched on the match day experience. What was the arrangements like in those days? Did you head up the day of the game and then you come back the next day?
Yeah. No, yeah, we went up that morning. We flew up that morning, as I say. A couple of Queensland officials up there met us up there, and they took us to the ground. And I spent some time just out on the ground talking to some guys. And Kevin was taken away, and he had a discussion with, I think the guy's name was Ross Livermore at the time. I think he might have been the equivalent of our John Quayle down here, or whoever it might have been. And they had a discussion in there. And then anyway, Kevin came back, and as I say, we went and just had a light lunch and just had a quiet afternoon, and just rested up until they took us out to the ground where Kevin were on our way to the ground. And Kevin had a tape in the car, and he played I Still Call Australia Home. He played it over and over again as we travelled to the ground. Yeah, it was just a great experience.
So New South Wales won in the end. However, this wouldn't have taken away from the whole Lang Park experience. How did you find the atmosphere and I suppose the ferocity of the Queensland supporters?
Oh, it's just great, because when I went to Lang Park, that the ground was nothing like it is today, and the grandstand was like a galvanised iron grandstand. And when the noise came out, because it could only go one way, and that was onto the field, and the noise out there was just absolutely, it was massive. It was tremendous. And when the game started, it kicked off, and a couple of things I remember in the game. I remember quite clearly. I remember Royce Simmons. He got poleaxed and got knocked out. Anyway, he survived, and he ended up winning the man of the match. But before you knew it, half time came, and I thought, where did that 40 minutes go? It just went. You sort of just don't remember it. There's nothing. It was just the time just went because of this, the pressure of the game and the noise of the crowd, and the second half came, and the second half was very, very similar. And it was at the end, it was just like an anticlimax. It was all over. And you think, what happened? Where did it go?
Yep.
Unfortunately, the guys up there, they gave us a tape of the game, a VHS tape of the game, so you could come home and sit back and watch it. And I looked at things on the tape and I thought, geez, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. Yep. Fortunately, I didn't miss anything, not to my knowledge anyway. But it was a wonderful experience.
I think, it ended up being a fairly uncontroversial game, which is good to see. And I think New South Wales ended up winning 3-0 that year, I think, from memory.
I think you're right. Daniel. Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
Now, I must ask you, I've asked a couple other people, those flags that they had back then, it looks like you're carrying a bed sheet on a stick. They're massive.
They are. They're big. When they gave it to him, I thought, my godfather, you held it and it dragged along the ground alongside you. It was, I've still got it out the back out there. I forgot about that. Still got the flag. Yep. It was quite long. It was probably, in the old terms, it was probably from the stick back down to the point was probably nearly 2.5 foot. It was quite long.
Yep. So 1986 turned out to be quite a successful year for you. We'll touch on your latest success that year, but I just wanted to briefly touch on, there was a match that year in 86 at, I believe, at Brookvale Oval, where there's quite a big stink. We saw some footage of it come up on the screen before. What were your memories of this stink?
Oh, yeah. I got a feeling, I just think I'm correct too here. I think that was on the Sunday prior to that State of Origin game.
There you go.
I think that's when it was. I think that was right. But yeah, it was a nice old blue. It was a real good one. And there was one particular player in that his name just escapes me now. He played for South, and he had a brother that also played. And he initially started the Donnybrook, and I sort of concentrated on him, trying to get him to calm down, and he put his hands up and walked away. He said, I'm out of it, nothing to do with it. So another fight starts over here somewhere. So you race over that. Next thing you got this same fella back in the middle of that. It was quite a real experience again.
Yep. So we talked about you had a little bit more success that year. It came in the final series. You did the reserve grade grand final this time between Parramatta and Easts. What'd you make of that experience? And then 86 overall as a year. It's probably his most successful year to date in first grade.
Oh, yeah, you're right, Daniel. 86 was a great year for me. I just made a simple little mistake in the first grade semi that cost me, and I think I might have got first grade. But anyway, that's the way it worked out, and I was privileged to run with Kevin and John in that game, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a wonderful experience, and yeah, no regrets. It was, if I made a mistake, well, bad luck, Peter. That's the way the cards fall.
Yep.
But as I say, to run with John and Kevin was just tremendous.
So that was that Canterbury South, I think, the finals game earlier, I think.
In the first grade. Yeah,
yes.
In the first grade game in the semi-final I was on, it was Canterbury. I can't remember because I remember an incident with Paul Langmack in that game, so I recall that quite well. But it might have been Southside played. I just can't remember, Daniel.
I think it may have been. Was that the hair pulling incident as well?
No. It was an incident where, the thing where I got myself a little bit of bother had to do with Paul Langmack. He passed the ball prior to him going into touch. He was on the ground virtually, and he wasn't. There was a heap of players there, and I put my flag up to say he'd gone into touch. When actual fact, it showed that he had not quite gone into touch. So. Yep. Yeah, but I can't remember who they played.
I think it might have been South. I think that year it was Baum. It was a top 5 back then, wasn't it?
Would have been, yes.
Yeah, I think it was Parramatta, Canterbury, South. I think Balmain and Manly were the other 2 teams in the final series that year.
No, Daniel, I couldn't tell you now. I really honestly couldn't. Yeah.
All good. So we'll move along to 1988, and another milestone in your career. You're appointed to the Prime Minister's 13 versus the touring Great Britain side. It's again at Seaford Oval. The Prime Minister's side was jam-packed, full of talent, with names like Phil Blake, Meninga, Geyer, Alexander, and Lazarus. This must have been an enjoyable moment for you.
It was, Daniel. Actually, I have the program here in my hand here as what you've got there now. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience. Eddie Ward was the referee, and the fellow touch judge was Mick Howell. And again, we flew down that morning, had the game. It was a tough, hard game of footy. They didn't muck around with one another, and atmosphere down in Canberra was quite good. It was big. It was a wonderful experience, and it was great after the game too. We went to the Queanbeyan Leagues Club they had a bit of a social thing on there, and I was lucky enough. I sat at a table with John Raper and a fella called Ernie Hamilton. Ernie was a great footballer that played for Australia and played for South Sydney, and Ernie was full of talk and telling some stories, and it was quite a funny man. But yeah, that whole day was a great experience, and we flew back home that night.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I was trawling through the footage. You even had a visitor on the field at one stage. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
The dog. There was a dog that came on the field. Eddie Ward had to shoo it away. You might have been running from the point of the try. You might have been running to the goalpost when that happened.
Oh, okay. No, I don't recall that. Yeah, you talk about it. I do recall in that grand final with Eastern Suburbs with Graham Energy's. Eastern Suburbs it might have been the reserve grade the year after. Someone put a chook out over the fence. I remember that on the cricket ground. People running around chasing this damn chook. The rooster, yeah.
So after just shy of 100 games as a first grade touch judge, your first grade career in that role comes to an end at the end of 1988. Can you tell us a bit about this time in your career?
Yeah, probably what had happened, Daniel. I gave up smoking. I was a terrible smoker. I used to smoke far too much. And I gave up cigarettes at the end of the football season. Well, when I gave up the smoking, I started to put a bit of weight on. We went back to training the next year, and Dennis Braybrook said to me at training, after a couple of training runs, he said, "Peter, I'm going to start you off in reserve grade." He said, "You're not quite as fit as you used to be." I said, "No, Dennis, I've no truck with that, no argument with that." He was 100% correct. We see how you progress. Well, I didn't progress any better, except in the waistline, probably. So I just continued to run around in reserve grade and probably the lower grades. But look, I found that absolutely, and the same as that my last year was in reserve grade, it was just so much easier. That there was no pressure on you. It wasn't the same. It was a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. I mean, I liked the first grade. It was wonderful, the pace of the game and all that. But when you went into reserve grade from after being in first grade, the pressure was just off you. It was just so much more relaxing. And seeing young referees coming through was another good experience. Yeah. But look, I had no regrets as far as that was. That's the way the cards fell.
Yep. You touched on it, a little bit of a different time back then, and we've seen it through a few people's career who we've spoken to. It was a custom in those days that particularly touch judges and some referees to a degree would actually go back and continue to referee and officiate in the lower grades at the back end of their career, which I suppose, I think that's a really good thing. They pass on the knowledge and experience to the younger guys coming through rather than just pulling the plug and saying bye-bye.
Yeah. No, it was good because, look, I mean, they just don't come to my mind at the moment. There were a couple of good young referees come through. There's a young fellow that came from St George, a fellow by the name of Tony Skeed, I think it was, and he was an extremely good referee. And I don't know what happened to him, but he sort of went by the wire. But there was a good crowd of young fellas going along, and they were making good progress, and it was good to run with them. And you try to, because like the things were sort of different in those days. You didn't have people coming telling you what to do halfway through the game and all this sort of thing, and you only relied on your mates out there to help you. And you get people talk to you about your performance or their performance, and like everyone, you had to sort of sort out the wheat from the chaff, and that's how it was. It's a lot different today than what it was then.
So in 1990, the noise was getting louder to see the introduction of in-goal touch judges for the semi-final series. You were appointed to that semi-final series in one of the first group of officials to do the in-goal touch judging. How did you find yourself in that position, particularly seeing you'd been in reserve grade since 1988?
Yeah, look, I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I think it was Dennis. They sort of said exactly what they wanted us to do and how to help them. It was a good experience. It was enjoyable. Sometimes it was a bit. You get a cold day. I recall a couple of days down in Canberra when, if the game's up at one end of the park and nothing's happening down your end, oh, by the living Harry, it was cold. But we were lucky; we could wear tracksuits and that sort of thing. But I can tell you a funny story. It was with Bill Harrigan at North Sydney Oval one day, and Bill was doing the first grade, and I was a reserve grade touch judge, and I had to do the in goal. And Bill said, "Put a bit more enthusiasm into it. If there's a try scored, put a bit of enthusiasm into it." So a guy scored the try, and I stood there and I gave him 2 thumbs up like that. Well, Harrigan laughed and blew the try and that sort of thing. Well, when I come off the ground, Dennis Brave, he tore me to shreds. He said, "What are you doing out there?" Oh dear. But that's life. That was fun. Yeah, no damage was done.
Was that the custom at those days that you would do the reserve grade line and then back up into the first grade in goal?
Yeah, that's how it was. Yeah, yep. I had a day one day at the Sydney Cricket Ground. I got a phone call very early on a Sunday morning, so I had to go out. I was appointed to reserve grade and also the in-goal judge that day, but somebody had pulled out, and I went out and did the third grade line, the reserve grade line, and the first grade in-goal judge. And yeah, at the end of the day, I was a bit weary. It was that's how it was.
Now it is a difficult position to fill. You touched on having a cold day where all the players up the other end, but you can get those, and then there's just one decision that you have to make in the game down your end, one crucial decision, and you've got to be on. You've got to be ready for it.
Yep.
So continuing on with strong performances in this role throughout 1991, you're appointed to the 91 Grand Final between Canberra and Penrith. We've got the team here up on the screen. Max Dunn, as we mentioned, was the other in-goal judge. Can you describe the emotions of this and the experience itself?
Oh, just wonderful again. I mean, the lead up through the week with the paper reports and the radio and the TV and all that sort of thing, and you think to yourself, well, I'm going to be involved in this. This is really going to be something, and it was something. And I remember being in the dressing room just prior to the game, and just before we went out, Bill Harrigan just sort of said to all of us, he said, "Look, this is us guys. This is our game, so let's go and enjoy it." And it was just a real feel good, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful moment, wonderful period of time. I loved it.
And as you mentioned, you get to be part of the team. You get to experience the grand final breakfast and all the other formalities that go on with it.
Yeah, it was. It was very enjoyable.
Yep. Do you have many memories of the match itself? It was Roy Simmons' last game. I think you actually probably got the busier of the two ends. Not much controversy, but a few tries down your end.
The part I recall that right at the end of that where Canberra took the short goal line dropout, and Mark Guy got the ball and passed it to Roy Simmons, and he scored the try right under my nose. And I can clearly see that as clear as anything. Wonderful memories. And that was right on just about full time. That was the end of the game as far as Canberra can score when he scored that try, when Roy Simmons scored that try.
As an aspiring young referee, it must be talking to many of you guys, many of the life members, and thinking back to these memories and things that I see on TV. It must be special for you guys to to see these things replayed on TV and to actually remember where you were and you were actually part of it, albeit in a small way. The players are obviously the focal point of these big memorable moments, but it must be nice looking back when it's all done and saying, yes, I was a part of this and I remember that.
Yeah, it is, Daniel. Well, to me it is. It's things I achieved that in my wildest dreams. I mean, I was 32 years of age when I started to referee. And I thought, oh, yeah, this would be good. And, you know, I did not know, my wildest dreams, I never thought I'd ever go and run on a first grade game of football. Yep. That was never going to happen. And, well, as things turned out, I mean, I achieved all that sort of thing. And you look back and it's just been wonderful, absolutely wonderful. You met some great people along the way. You made some great friends. You got some good advice with a lot of people. Yeah. Never got any bad advice, not really. No, it was always good. Somebody's always out to help you. Everyone tried to help you somewhere along the track. Your fellow referees, even though you're competing against one another, that was very powerful within your own junior association. You were competing against some good mates, and but you know, you always try to help one another. But as you said before, it's just great memories, wonderful memories.
So this was your last match as a first grade official. Did you know this at the time?
Well, I did. I sort of made my mind up. I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to go back into first grade. I was pretty determined that was never going to happen to me. And I thought to myself, well, I was just about nearly 50 years of age by then. And I thought to myself, look, it's just getting tougher. Training was starting to get a lot harder. When we first went to grade, you go to training on a Wednesday night at Redfern Oval or maybe the police academy down at Redfern, and you train for about 4 weeks. Then the football season would start, and that was the end of official training. There was no more training. You just had to get yourself fit yourself. Then things started to change a little bit later on. Jack Dancy was appointed director of referees, and Jack started to introduce weekly training, and that started to build up. But towards the end of my career, we had 2 appointed trainers at Henson Park where we used to train, and it was just getting tougher and harder. And I was getting older, and I thought to myself, this is not getting any easier, because I was never the fittest guy going. I'm the first to admit that. Dennis Brightbrook said that to me. He said, Pete, you're always at the back of the pack. I said, Dennis, someone has to come last. But look, I thought to myself, well, I can't finish any better than being on a grand final. So I thought, look, just go out while you can on top. Yep. And that's what I did, and had no regrets, none whatsoever.
And after a very successful career, it must be nice to be able to go out on your own terms and make that decision yourself.
Oh, well, to me it was good. You know, that's the way I wanted to do it. I thought to myself, I can do this all by myself. I can just make my own call. And I did it with some regret. I thought to myself, it's because you're a long time retired.
Yep.
You're a long time retired, but I could see there was always a future in refereeing. So I had my eyes on maybe going on the advisory board as time went by, and that's what I did.
Yep. So we'll talk about a bit of your off-field achievements now. You became a life member of the New South Wales Referees Association in 1991. Prior to this, you served in roles such as the Social Secretary, Social Committee, on the Hanson Memorial Committee. What did obtaining life membership mean to you?
Oh, again, like I said earlier, it's just something in your wildest dreams. You'd never ever thought you'd achieve anything. And to be honoured to join the members that I could look back and see now who were life members, and I thought, I'm being elevated to the same ranks as these guys by my peers. I just deemed it just such a great honour. It was just wonderful, and it just made it more special to be elevated the same night as my great friend Michael Ryan. Unfortunately, no longer with us now, Michael, but beyond my dreams to get that.
So it's interesting, and we touched on it before, throughout your career, you had quite a few parallels with the late Michael Ryan. You're both graded in the same year. You ran many games together, and you received your life memberships Blazers the same year together.
Yep. He's a good bloke, Mick. unfortunately, he got sick. He's no longer with us, as we said, but yeah, he was a really good fellow, and and he had a wonderful sense of humour, very, very, very dry sense of humour. He had a bit of streak of larrikin in him. We used to take the mickey out of poor old Kevin Roberts at times because Kevin was always complaining he couldn't get a pair of socks, or because Michael was on the gear committee, and so Michael had thrown me over a pair of red socks. He'd say, "There's those socks you wanted, Peter." And Bill goes, "I've been trying to get socks for weeks," and was always a G up because, but yeah, great bloke, yeah, wonderful fella.
And one of many that used to chew that gum.
He did. He certainly did too, Michael. Yeah, and he moved on to too. He got very involved with the junior reps and did a great job there too. He was very highly spoken of by a lot of people who had dealings with him.
Yes,
he's just a wonderful guy. Yeah,
that was something I was going to say. It's really important and nice that his legacy lives on through the Mick Ryan Award, which is the referee's referee for the New South Wales Junior Reps, which is a fitting tribute to the man himself. Now, not only are you a life member of the New South Wales Referees Association, you're also a life member of Canterbury Bankstown Referees. Can you fill us in a little bit about some of the roles that you've held in Canterbury, and again, what it meant to be named a life member of that association?
Yeah, well, it's like, when I joined Canterbury, and I mean, these things I had no idea what referees associations were about or anything. And I started off, you'd go to the meetings, and after the meetings, they'd all hang around and have a beer and that sort of thing. And I thought, oh, this is all right. This is a bit of fun. And we go out, we go and do our refereeing, and they were very, very social. There were a lot of social functions we would attend, barbecues and not movie theatres, live theatres where we go to different places, picnics, just great social side of things. So I got involved. Eventually, I stood for the social committee. I thought, I'll get involved in this. And I can always remember it. And I think Michael Thompson was the social secretary. And when the meeting was over, we had what they called the convivial. So I went over to Mike Thompson. I said, right, what do you want me to do? He said, well, go over to Leo Randall over there, the old fella over there. You know, Leo, go and ask him what he wants. So I walked over to Leo. I said, what do you want, Leo? He said, reshes and often. But, from there I eventually became, I don't think I was ever social secretary at Canterbury. No, I was on the committee for several years. I was vice president and various other things there, but they were all good years, and you enjoyed every moment of it. It was great fun, and I think everything I achieved in refereeing, I always think to myself, I take it back and owe it to the Canterbury Bankstown Referees Association. I learned so much from so many good people there and made so many good friends there. But your whole structure of what you become as a referee started with my junior association. So I'm ever grateful to those people back in that association.
I think it's something I like to carry with myself. Someone told me once, you never take your eyes off where you're going, but you never forget where you come from.
Oh, exactly right, Daniel. Yeah, very wise words.
Yeah. So your ongoing contributions have been acknowledged with the awarding of the Leo Randall Award. We spoke to Cole Turnell last week, a fellow winner, and what that award means. It's for 25 years service beyond your life membership, and it's the most prestigious award in Canterbury. What did it mean to achieve that award to you?
Oh, again, a wonderful honour. It was a tremendous honour to be able to receive that. You felt, Leo was a wonderful man, a great guy. He left an association a great legacy. You had to know the guy to know what he was like. I mean, if you didn't understand the man, he was sort of frightening. But he had such a weird sense of humour, and he had a twinkle in his eye. But he was just a wonderful man, and to be given an award that's named after him, I mean, something you don't go looking for. You don't go looking for these things. That they happen. You just get involved in things, and time goes by and you keep getting involved in your own association, it's because you enjoy it, and you get satisfaction out of it, and to be presented with it. And he was a great mate of Leo's, the fellow presenting the trophy there, Jack Harvey. Jack was a wonderful guy and another real character, a real character, Jack Harvey.
Yep.
Wonderful fella. Yeah.
I think it's, and we've touched on it a few times throughout this series, the people outside the refereeing fraternity not knowing what kind of relations and atmosphere and camaraderie that's built up within the group. But I think it's that buy-in that you touched on. You give something and you join in, but then it gives you something, so you want to give some more and keep giving.
Yeah.
Yep.
True, very true.
And it must be nice to have that recognition. I mean, names, household names, like not only Canterbury, but New South Wales, join people like Les Matthews, Garwood, Bobby Stiles, Peter Longhurst, just to name a few.
Yeah, great fellas, yeah. And my good friend who started me off in refereeing there, he got it the year before I did, Todd Walker. Wonderful man.
Now, another award that you achieved, or another piece of recognition, not specifically a refereeing award, but quite a few referees in our association obtained this award, was the Australian Sports Medal in 2000. Yeah. Can you tell us how this came about for you? How did you find out and what it meant to you?
Yeah, how I found out was a hell of a shock. I'd been up at Liverpool on an advisory board capacity. I think I watched Gerard Sutton referee. I think I wrote a report on Gerard that day. And Les Matthews is up there, and at the end of the day, Les came over to me. He had a box like a pizza box. And he said, take this home. When you get home, open it. So I took it home and opened it, and lo and behold, there's what was in the box. And I got the shock of my life. And I rang Les up. I said, what on earth's all this about? He said, well, you were nominated. He said, along with a few other fellows, and you were given this for your recognition for what you've been doing with your refereeing side of things and football and that. And I was just dumbfounded, and still am today. And who nominated me? I don't know. I have no idea. I wouldn't have a clue. But I deem it a great honour, and I feel very, very, very privileged to be able to be awarded that. Wonderful.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there's only, is it 18,000 in total, I think?
I don't know, Daniel. No, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's only a very small number right across Australia throughout numerous people that have contributed lots to their various different sports. So you're one of few members that have had dual affiliations. Obviously, you've moved down to the South Coast since the conclusion of your first grade career. You joined Group 7 referees, and you were the director there for 15 years, helping to develop some of the younger referees. How did this come about, and can you tell us a little bit about your role here?
Yeah, well, look, I'll go back to the start. How it came about was when I was the Social Secretary of New South Wales, and we then, through the Ian McCall, who was the President of New South Wales, and Les was the Secretary, they started to develop a good, strong relationship with Country Rugby League Referees Association, because for many years, apparently, I don't know, but relationships weren't as good as the people would have liked. So they started to develop this very good relationship with the Country Referees Association. I went to several country referees' annual general meetings along with Les. And when the city country games were played, being the social secretary, I used to organise a dinner that night afterwards at various places. Mostly we used to go to Eastern Suburbs Leagues Club. But that's when I got to meet Nick Best, who's there in that photo, along particularly with Kevin Riolo. And I developed a pretty strong relationship with those gentlemen. Well, when I moved down the coast, Nick lived down here in Group 7. Nick was the president of Group 7 for many years, and Nick was also then on the Country Referees Appointments Board. So I started to play golf down here with Nick. And after golf one day, he approached me and he said, would you be interested in getting involved with the Group 7 referees down here? He said, because he said, they need some guidance and some leadership and one thing and another. And I said to Nick, I've never done anything before in my life, you know. He said, well, he said, been around rugby league for a long while refereeing, and he said, you've been on the advisory board of the New South Wales Rugby League for a few years. And so anyway, I thought about it because I'd had some good coaching from Michael Stone and Maxie Thompson when I was on the advisory board, and they were running things then, and I picked up a lot about refereeing from those guys, and I thought, oh, well, I'll give it a go and see how it goes. And unfortunately, I couldn't join Group 7 referees. They wouldn't let me join Group 7 referees because I was appointed by the group, and they said I was a league appointment, so they wouldn't allow me to join the association. Even though I could go to the meetings, I could contribute in every way, shape or form with them, but I couldn't become a member. It was quite a unique situation. But anyway, that didn't deter me. But then I had 15 very good years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was a challenge. It was a real challenge because the group extended from Warilla in the north down to Bateman's Bay in the south, and various degrees of guys of different ages and personalities and characters, and trying to keep them all happy was not the easiest thing. It was because as soon as you'd appoint someone to somebody, they'd ring you up and say, well, I thought I might have got to go before he did, or something like that. But they're good people. I'm still affiliated with, I'm still associated with them. I am the patron of Group 7 referees, which I deem a great honour. But they were good years, and I was lucky enough to be able to see some young fellas come through, and a young lady eventually come through their ranks down here. And I still had the contacts up in Sydney earlier with Les, and later on with Steve Clapson. And I said, look, come and have a look at some of these people. They can referee. And the two young Treneman boys, Chris and Matt Treneman, came from Group 7 and succeeded up there. Then a young Carolee Nolan started running around down here, and I'd watch Carolee and I thought, oh, don't live and Harry, this girl can referee. She could run, and she was good. She was athletic. And but I used to say to them, look, I could take you so far, but I can't fine tune you. To advance your refereeing, if you want to go to Sydney, once you go up there, those people up there with the knowledge that they have now, they'll fine tune you, and they'll make you a lot better referees. And I think they did. That's exactly what they did. And yeah, so I think Chris and Matt, unfortunately, they're not involved anymore, which is pretty sad. But Carolee, she's still around, and yeah, she'll make a fist of it. She's a very good referee. But yeah, look, they were great years. I met a lot of made a few enemies at times, I think, with appointments down here. I mean, some of the clubs didn't always see eye to eye with you, but look, that's life.
Yep.
But in the finish, I thought, well, look, I've had enough. At 15 years, I thought, no, that'll do me. Yeah.
Yep.
But it's been a great experience. It's been wonderful.
Yep. Now we'll just quickly go back to something in terms of your on-field career. I have a bit of an eye for quirky things that go on the field, and I was trawling through some footage, and I found there was a match, a Monday night match in 1985, Steelers versus Balmain at the SCG. Now, we don't need to talk specifically about the incident, but I just want to use it as a point to highlight some of the differences in touch judging from your days actively touch judging to coaching as a referee's coach. We have a field goal here from a Balmain. It's followed by a kick out on the full from the kickoff. Oh, sorry, a kick that doesn't go 10. So we have a penalty, and then Ross Conlon steps up from halfway and kicks a 50-metre penalty goal. Now, they were quite common in those days, taking the 2 points from a long way out. Now, another thing that was quite common in those days, as a touch judge, you used to have to come on to the scrums and alert the referee about the substitutions. So the role sort of changed over the last 20 to 30 years.
That's correct, yeah. Look, when a replacement came to you, the league brought out the league had a rule of what they do is a player would come to you and he'd say, I'm going to replace number 7. So he's got a Balmain jumper on, so he's going to replace Balmain number 7. So, okay, that's not a problem. So as soon as you'd say to him, as soon as there's a break in play, I'll take you on. So you'd run onto the field and you'd say to the referee, this player's replacing number 7 for Balmain. So off you'd go, and number 7 for Balmain would go off. But I had an unusual incident at Belmore Oval one day, and a Canterbury player came up and he said, "I'm going to replace Frank." I said, "What's Frank's number?" He said, "I haven't got a clue." I said, "Well, you've got to give me his number." And he's yelling out to the trainer, "What's Frank's number? What's Frank's number?" So anyway, they've determined Frank was number 15, whatever it was. So I ran out onto the field with the player. I said, "Come on, let's go." I said, "This player's replacing number 15. So I'm running off. And all of a sudden I look up and I heard this something or other, a bloke behind me say, "Look, I'm pretty crook. I'll go, you stay here." So next thing, number 15 didn't run past me, number 17 runs past me. So I stopped and I said to the referee, "The wrong players left the field." Well, by then this bloke just bolted and he went into the dressing room. So they had to go and get this guy out of the dressing room, bring him back out, get number 15 off the field. Well, the then coach, this is in a first grade game, the then coach of the Canterbury side was a gentleman with the same surname as mine, and he used to write newspaper articles. Well, when his article came up during the week, we got castigated because we wouldn't let this player replace the other bloke. Well, we were only enforcing the laws that were brought out by the rugby league.
Yep.
Yeah, quite comical.
And I suppose now you can't even substitute at a scrum, so it's changed quite a lot.
No.
And things
It's
like
changed.
there was a lot more emphasis on back play as a touch judge, whereas nowadays you've got on-ball decisions and largely responsible for the 10 metres.
Yep.
So the roles evolved over the.
That's one thing you had to do is I learned a lot, particularly as I said earlier from Bobby Hunt about back play. You had to keep your eye on it because if you missed something that was bad, I mean, that was your career could have been on the rocks. And you picked up a few things. There was an incident you had up on the screen there earlier where a player got 10 weeks because of an incident. That was at Leichhardt Oval. And you had to watch back play. That was your job, because if you come off and it used to be funny, you'd walk in the dressing room after a game and Eric Cox had come in, and if you said to Eric, "Geez, Joe Bloggs had a great game, didn't he?" He'd look at you and say, "Obviously you weren't watching the back play well." So you had to be very careful with your choice of words.
So before we finish off with our Fast Five, I've been asking all Life members, what's the biggest thing that you've taken from the game of rugby league, or what's refereeing given you?
Oh, a great deal of satisfaction, a tremendous amount of satisfaction, and some wonderful friends, and met some really, 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 really wonderful people. Two in particular from Canterbury Bankstown. Look, I don't want to name them, but what they did for me off the field was just wonderful, and I've ever indebted to those two guys. But friendship's been tremendous, both from Canterbury, Bankstown, New South Wales, Group 7 referees, country referees, and the satisfaction of achieving what I achieved was just, I still sometimes shake my head and think, boy, oh boy, I never thought I'd ever achieve that. But yeah, it's just been a great career. I've loved it, loved every minute of it.
I think that's one of the remarkable things about refereeing is you start off in your associations, in your little cliques or in your little groups, and then you move into grade, and then you form these new friendships. It's like you've known those people for many a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true too. I mean, it's good when I go to the Life Members Night or a function they have at the cricket ground, and you strike up these guys you don't see them for 12 months, but it's just great as you only saw them last week, and good blokes, great. You catch up with occasionally. I was just here recently, rang Max Dunn on the phone, had to talk to Max. You catch up with blokes every now and then. And unfortunately, like living down here, I find it difficult. I'd love to go up to Canterbury referees meetings a lot more often. It's just too difficult. I just find it hard. It's tough driving of a night time now, so you can't do everything you used to be able to do, but you still have contacts with them, which is great. Yeah.
So we'll head into our Fast Five to finish off. Barbecue or tomato sauce?
Tomato. Ford or Holden? Ford.
State of Origin or Grand Final?
Oh, I think Grand Final, no doubt. I think, that was just the build-up of a week of it, and luckily enough for me, being on 3 of them in different grades was just enormous. Even though State of Origin was something else too.
I think the location of where you live tells us this one, but beach or snow?
Yeah, well, if I just look to my left out there through the slats over there, I can see the beach, so I'll take beach any day.
Yep. And last one to finish off, money or free time?
Oh, free time, yeah, can't beat it. All the money in the world doesn't give you anything, doesn't give you all the stuff that free time can give you, yeah.
It certainly does. We can't get enough of free time. Thank you for your time today, Peter. You've had a tremendous on-field career and you've contributed plenty off the field. It's been very enjoyable listening to your stories, and we're very thankful for you giving of your time this morning. So stay safe, and hopefully I'll get to catch up with you in the near future.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Good on you. Thank you.
See you, Pete.
Bye.